Pew survey said that 70% of people who never attend church or seldom attend church think that there is conflict between science and religion. And I imagine that that perception creates doubts in their mind about the veracity of the Christian faith. But is that really valid? I'm joined today by Balajied Nongrum, who is trained in veterinary science, philosophy, theology, and science and religion to answer that question. Balajied, a lot of people have doubts, and sometimes those doubts are triggered by scientific discoveries. Has there ever been anything that you've learned in the sciences that has caused you to doubt your faith as a Christian?
That's a very good question. In fact, having studied science for most of my educational pursuit, I don't think that I have had any doubt that has arisen because of my study of science. In fact, it is the reverse. It is the evidence that is being presented through the lens of science that has really convinced me more of the existence of God.
Now, has there been anything outside of science that has caused you to doubt your faith?
Well, the one that I can immediately think of, there is one that is on the issue of the coexistence of God and evil. Growing up as a follower of Christ, looking all around me, the issues of evil and suffering that people go through and that I have gone through personally, even in my own life, this has led me to probably question the reason, if at all there is, for the existence or the coexistence of God and evil. And I think that is one area where I have probably wrestled with.
How did you resolve some of those concerns?
Well, having studied theology and the other disciplines as well, I have come to an understanding that this whole dilemma concerning the coexistence of God and evil has to do basically with our understanding of who God is. We need to first understand who God is, the very nature of God. You see, God from the scripture, from the biblical point of view, is a holy God. And He's created the heavens and the earth. He's created us, human beings, in His own image. And He's created man perfect. And so everything that He's created and He declared to be good. But there is also another important thing to consider, and that is this, that while God has created man to be perfect, He has also given this ability or of choosing, the freedom to choose in our life. And so I think in giving us this freedom of the will or the choice that we can make in our life, there is a potential thing that He has probably, there is a possibility of evil coming in, where the issue is not that evil is an entity where God has created, but it is actually our wills that has gone haywire. When we have gone astray from the will of God or from the blueprint of what God has meant for us to actually live, it is then that we have committed, or we have probably evil has, it's like a gate that is open for evil to come in. The other important thing that we need to also understand is that, evil cannot exist on its own. It's like you have darkness and light. And if you want to have, darkness cannot exist on its own. It is only when the light is turned off that you have darkness that is set in. So evil in itself cannot exist. It is when light has been done away with that evil or darkness sets in.
Now, that's really interesting, because another facet of this problem of evil, as it's called, is the pain and the suffering that's caused by natural processes. Sometimes philosophers and theologians will refer to it as natural evil. So this is not simply man failing to make the proper moral choices, but rather it's processes in nature that cause pain and suffering. How do you respond to that?
See, again, from the biblical point of view, I would say that, everything has to probably do with the origin of the fall or the original sin. And it is when man, who is the crown of God's creation, that has gone haywire, that everything else followed suit. But what is also more important is that when we think of this issue, we need to think of what are the reasons that perhaps evil or the existence of evil, what are the reasons, the positive reasons. Many a times we tend to probably think that just because man does not have all the reasons of why God allows evil and suffering to exist, we tend to think perhaps that there are no reasons. But when you really look at there are important things that we can learn and understand as to why there is a possibility of the coexistence of good and evil in this world. We can probably look at 4 important things. One is probably we can look at the whole purpose of evil. Sometimes we cannot deny the fact that evil can, suffering in our life can bring the best in our character. In fact, I've seen that, I've performed well, especially when you've gone through suffering in life, that it brings the best out of you. The other thing is also the moral issues that it can bring into your life, where you can learn few important lessons as a result of all the issues that you go through in life. But thirdly, and most importantly, I think evil and suffering can also be used by God to appeal to us, or to probably stop us from going haywire in life. I think it was C.S. Lewis who said best that God whispers to us during our pleasure, but God screams and yells to us in the midst of evil and suffering. I'm paraphrasing that, but I think the point is this, that God can draw our attention even through evil and suffering. And I think that is very, very important. And lastly, I think what is also important is this, that when you really look at suffering, it can also serve as a warning, for warning us against any danger that is ahead of us. I can't help but think of a book that has been written by Dr. Paul Brand, who actually co-authored with Philip Yancey. The title of this book is The Gift of Pain. Now, in this book, he talks about, as you would know, that Dr. Paul Brand has worked in the medical institute in India, which is very famous. It is the CMC, Christian Medical College. And in fact, he was doing research in leprosy. And in fact, during his research, he found that people who would suffer with leprosy would suffer from a disease that is actually the inability on their part to suffer or to feel pain, And so one of the important things that Dr. Paul Brand talks about in this book is that one of the important prayer that perhaps a person who's suffering with leprosy would pray is, God grant me the gift of pain. God grant me the gift of pain. And so I think that is true even for us. When you go through pain, let's say a toothache that we may have from time to time. And in fact, it is this pain that will probably trigger or tell you that, you need to go and see a dentist to get that pain rectified, or to probably, address that pain. So I think it is important that while we look at this whole aspect of evil and suffering, we need not look at the existence of suffering as something that would negate the existence of God. But in fact, we need to see that there are positive reasons for the coexistence of God and suffering and evil.